Today we're going to talk about a stat that a lot of people find really confusing, and that is the open bolt delay. If you're really unfamiliar with what this is, I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate it, and you'll have a pretty good grasp of what open bolt delay is and if it is impacting you or not, because it's not for every weapon. And depending on your play style, you may or may not run into an open bolt delay issue. And that's why sometimes people will favor one weapon over another. We're going to go ahead and try and explain it as easy as possible. If you enjoy the video, learn something new, please do me that favor, hit the like button. If you're brand new, want to find your way back, double check, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on. So one of the best ways to show if a weapon has an open bolt delay or not is to just spam the trigger in a regular match. Whether you're doing it with the mouse or you're spamming R1 or RB, you'll be able to tell definitively if a weapon has an open bolt delay or not pretty quickly, and you'll see it once we go through this example. For this specific example that I'm going to be showing in game, we're going to be using the Mac 10 as well as the Fennec because they're right around 1100 RPM, which for the sake of this demonstration isn't really all that important because I can only spam at about 600 RPM anyways, so I'm not even going to reach the trigger cap, but it's still going to be very obvious which weapon has an open bolt delay and which weapon does not. The easiest way to demonstrate this is just to spam the trigger like I said. I'm not perfect, so sometimes I may hold the trigger a little bit too long, but you're going to see a pretty distinct difference even after one attempt. So I'm going to go ahead and spam this pretty much as quick as I can right here. So some of those cases, maybe 2 bullets coming out or whatever, but let's go ahead and compare that sound to the Fennec and me spamming it around 600 RPM. So you can hear the audio difference, and this becomes noticeable with weapons when you are trying to just spam the trigger. Obviously with an SMG, you probably wouldn't spam the trigger, but there's several instances where maybe you would adjust your aim and this gets added around to your TTK. So when you pull the trigger, whether you're in hip fire or whether you're aimed down sight, you're going to get this delay. So if you come into a building and you jump around the corner and one person has open bolt delay and the other one doesn't, you're essentially adding 50 milliseconds on, give or take. Some are 33, some are 50, some are 67. It's like one frame up and one frame down around 50 milliseconds. It kind of just depends on the weapon. But for the vast majority, it's right around 50 milliseconds, 60 milliseconds. And then when you come into around a corner, you're going to go ahead and jump, land the first shot. And in real time, it's kind of hard to notice. You have to be really in tune with the weapon when you're using it. If you're going to go ahead and kind of jump around, there's going to be a slight delay, and 50 milliseconds is sometimes the difference where the enemy is one shot and you're dead, or vice versa, the enemy's dead and you're one shot, just by one bullet difference, because that's what inevitably what one bullet ends up being at high RPM guns is about 60, 70 milliseconds in between shots. That's enough to get an extra bullet in the mix, which can be the deciding factor in a gunfight. The other part of it is if you're using it for range, some people say, it's not that big a deal. But if you do recoil control with releasing the trigger, what will end up happening is you hold the trigger, and then once you release it, you see how it recenters. And this is pretty much with every gun in the game. It auto recenters for you without adjusting any aim. So if I just pull the trigger and let go at any point, it automatically goes back and recenters itself. So a lot of times good players, what they'll do is release the trigger, because it'll go right back to center. That's why COD has probably one of the lowest skill gaps in the game in any FPS shooter, because without me even controlling recoil, it'll automatically recenter. So what good people tend to do is they'll burst fire. So at range, if somebody is considerably far, what I'm gonna do is pull the trigger, release, pull the trigger. And if you have that play style where you're using maybe a little bit higher recoil weapon that actually has a burst, an open bolt delay, usually LMGs, you're gonna end up with a scenario where maybe you're adjusting recoil. Maybe not that blatant where I'm making these long gaps, but you can adjust and then you'll fire the weapon and you're not going to have those issues. Damn, that thing laser beams. Now let's go ahead and take a look at how big a difference these rate of fires are. So pretty much what I've done for this example is I basically line these up with 30 rounds because obviously it's a little bit easier to be consistent with 30 versus 55 rounds or something like that. I would get a little bit of inconsistency where maybe I held the trigger just a little too long, so it fired 2 bullets. Throws off a little bit of the thing, but you kind of could see it plain as day in those. So pretty much I just go measure how long it takes to fire, and then 30 bullets of around the same fire rate. This particular case is the P90, and then we also did the PPSH versus we just saw the Mac 10 and the Fennec. and I was showing weapon with and without open bolt delay. And you can see there's like a clear delay. This is going to be the same fire rate as a weapon we're going to see over here. So if I go over here, even if I just hold forward, you can see that the fire rate is much smoother, less delays, no breaks, just by me holding that rate of fire. If I go back over here, you can go ahead and look at this one. I'm going to go ahead and hold forward again. And you'll see there's a clear, distinct pausing in between these shots. That is very noticeable in full speed and even in slower motion. And what this ends up equating to is a significant decrease in your rate of fire, especially if you're letting off the trigger. Obviously, just letting off the trigger in general is going to slow down your rate of fire because it goes from going full auto to semi-auto for a couple shots to reburst, and you can get heavily penalized. So this really depends on play style, and we'll kind of go over some of the weapons that do have open bolt delays. So what this ends up looking like is if I was spamming the trigger, I end up with a rate of fire of around 600, which is about 9 times per second. Some people go significantly faster. Some people are doing like 12, 13, 14 times a second. So people can get way faster RPM. But what we notice is that the RPM I was getting was around like 400 because I was doing a little bit of spams in there, but it actually measured the timings out between the shots and average timing of about 221, which slows down the fire rate considerably because of these open bolt delays. If I was consistent in just spamming the trigger and letting that open bolt delay take effect. I know there's a lot of numbers on screen, but at the end of the day, what is important is understanding which weapons have an open bolt delay, and depending on your play style, when will it actually impact you. So for example, the MAC-10 has an open bolt delay, the PPSH, the Uzi, and the Milano. Those are pretty much all of the point blank range weapons that will have an open bolt delay. When it comes to LMGs, I usually have those on my spreadsheet as well. So normally if you go to the TTK compared spreadsheet, I usually have open bolt delay on this right side, and these TTKs are not factoring that value in. So if you add an extra 60 millisecond TTK, it can actually impact the weapon significantly. Even though the Fin Adverse has one of the fastest, if not the fastest TTK overall with this specific barrel, the fact that it has an open bolt delay would increase this TTK by 60, which would bring it up to 600 milliseconds, which is still pretty dang fast. MG82 has the same issue. The SCAR, nope, but the Bruin, the PKM, and the RPD, and as far as the RAL, you can see that they've kind of placed a lot of these weapons with the open bolt delay with faster TTKs, and the open bolt delay is compensated by that lower TTK. So in some scenarios, they've already accounted for it by how they balance the weapon, and you can kind of see how it works there. You just got to be aware of how it's going to impact you. So there's no attachments that can change an open bolt delay either. So if you have a weapon that where you come in, you're going to have the sprint to fire time plus an open bolt delay. So that's in addition to whatever sprint to fire time it has. So especially when we were talking about those SMGs just a second ago, you're going to have like a 200 millisecond sprint to fire time, and then you're going to tack that on to an open bolt delay, and then you get the first shot on, and hopefully you're accurate because you got to aim down sight, and this is independent of that. Open bolt delay exists every time you release the trigger and pull the trigger again. So hold it for 10 bullets, release, open bolt delay. Open bolt delay. Every time you pull the trigger, there's an open bolt delay. So if you get into a fight where you're transferring from one person, and normally with another gun, you would just hold the trigger, cool. Maybe you can't because you're going to run out of bullets or something like that. You're going to transfer, you're going to release, and you're going to have a delay before that weapon can be fired. And you see this a lot with guns that have slow sprint to fire times, causing some issues. Open bolt delays can be added on to that, and sometimes in scenarios where the guns are really bad, that's why you end up seeing so many LMGs perform very bad up close, because their sprint to fire time, their ADS times, their open bolt delay, and then it's like, okay, now you're in a bad situation because before you even got a chance to fire your weapon, you've already taken 3, 4, 5 bullets of damage depending on how fast your reaction time is in those scenarios. So just something to keep in mind. Obviously, it's not a deal breaker for loadouts, but you do got to understand how to use it. And a lot of times, if you're going to be using an SMG with an open bolt delay, it is ideal to pre-fire so you already get those bullets out before the person comes around, so you're not reacting late. But obviously, in some cases, you can't really control that. Hopefully, you guys did enjoy the video, learned something new. If you did, please do me a favor, hit the like button. If you're brand new, want to find your way back, double check, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on. Appreciate your support. Thank you for watching. As always, have a great day.